the whole idea now then is for the Senate to get to conference. And just think about the process. If you have the House, which has passed an actual bill, and the Senate, which has passed 3 measures that really don't really have any, structure of a bill whatsoever, what do you think is going to come out of that conference committee? It's very likely that it will be something that looks very much like the House bill. And the so-called moderates in the Senate that have resisted anything like the House bill will now have this decision to make. Because what will happen is, at the end of this process, the House and Senate will be presented with a bill that they can't amend, that they're going to have to vote up or down on, and it will be a take it or leave it situation.
Yep.
In other words,
Yep.
You either vote for this or Obamacare lives and wreaks the havoc that they believe it wreaks.
I would even articulate it this way. Mitch McConnell is going to say to Dean Heller and to Capito and to Portman, this is a vote between Obamacare or our care. So there is no, that's it. You're choosing either Obamacare, and that's going to be, and there's one other wrinkle here though, right? Is that the House bill, because, this is like any type of negotiation, you go in, if the people, that's why they always say, like, you be the one to draw the paper up. They have the bill, they go into that situation. The House bill is not compliant with the Byrd rule, right? And so, and so here's the big question, it seems to me, and what I was suggesting last night on Twitter is that it seems to me this means that they're going to go for the filibuster. That's going to be the first vote, right? Is going to be chuck the filibuster.
Well, what they can do is appeal the ruling of the parliamentarian. So they can, and that's essentially what was done to create the nuclear option. Like, for example, when Supreme Court justices could be not filibusterable. That's how they did it. So the parliamentarian says, well, you got to chuck this, and this. And Vice President Pence can sit there and say, no, they don't. And that can be upheld by a 50 votes standard. So,
and
yes,
that effectively
possible.
That effectively destroys the filibuster, though, doesn't it? Right? I mean,
yeah, well, it does for the purposes of reconciliation bills. Now, that's one bill a year, but if you're saying effectively that one time a year you don't have to deal with the 60 vote hurdle, then you're essentially going to have one bill a year in the Senate that has everything that's controversial in any way thrown into it, right?
Yep.
That would be the precedent that would be set. But the other way that they could do that is to modify the language, work with the parliamentarian and try to come up with language that would work. It's certainly possible. Or jettison, this provision or that provision and squeeze those who are in favor of those provisions in the same way that the moderates are going to get squeezed. And understand how McConnell has sold his the Portmans and the Capitos and the Hellers of the world on this bill. The first thing he said was, just get us to the motion to proceed, and you can amend the bill on the floor to your liking, no problem. Now what he's saying is, just get this over to conference and we'll work it out there. Don't worry about it. And what he's going to say at the end, after these moderates get absolutely nothing that they want and will be presented with a bill that they've already been on the record for months as hating, he'll say, there's nothing else we can do. It's either this or Obamacare, take it or leave it.
Right.
So it's such a bait and switch that's being perpetrated, and willingly. I mean, these senators, it's painfully obvious what is going on, that they're walking into a death trap, and they're doing it with their eyes wide open.
And so do you think it's going to work? I mean, like,
Well, that's the question. You brought up the bird rule problems, which are serious problems for the bill. Number one. Number two, there's the question of Saints order of John McCain. Will he show up for a vote ultimately on whether it's the vote for the end of this process to get the thing to conference, or whether it's the vote after the conference is over? Will he be there? Because if you have two votes, Senator Collins and Senator Murkowski, who are against this thing and presumably will continue to be against this thing, and you lose McCain, then it's 50-49, and you can't pass the bill. So there are wild cards. There are variables here. And then there's the question of whether or not Senator Heller and Capito and Portman will willingly walk into their own destruction. So I don't think it's a done deal, but there is a path to success. Now, the other question is whether those on the right who have been kind of wary of something like the House bill will move forward on it. People like Rand Paul or Mike Lee. If they decide at the end of the process, no, this isn't to our liking, then maybe you. But they're going to, of course, be squeezed in the same way that Heller and Capito are going to be squeezed. So it's certainly not over. It's a question of whether there is a skinny repeal out there that everybody can agree on and live with. It's a question of whether senators are going to be willing to give up their own authority and their own ability to actually shape this bill. And there are questions about procedure, and there's questions about John McCain.
All right.
But that seems to be the variables to me.
As far as I can tell, John McCain is the only real one. I mean, the others, I think to a certain extent, look, Mitch McConnell must have a plan. He must have a plan, because the downside of this is that he has stretched out and elongated a massive, massive loss, right? This is, if he thought at the end of this that he didn't have at least a fighting chance, like a significant chance, and I guess sort of, cross-reference with how important it is to do this in terms of what they want to do after this, it seems to me he would have just punted a long time ago. But he's basically driving right towards the cliff, and he must obviously think there's a bridge there.
Keep in mind how much of this is being done on the fly. I mean, literally, senators found out about this skinny repeal thing yesterday from reporters. Like, there has been no communication whatsoever. We saw during the debate over the motion to proceed this long conversation between Ron Johnson and Mitch McConnell. Johnson was the last senator who did not agree to the motion to proceed before finally voting yes. And there was this 10-minute conversation on the floor that, we didn't have the NSA microphones to hear, but it was animated and you could see faces reddening. And that's I think it reflects some of the perspective within the Republican caucus in the Senate that they're not being dealt with honestly, that they're not being included in the process. And, one senator at this point can really change the world here. So that you have to add that into the consideration.
In other words, what you're saying is they realize that Mitch McConnell is jamming it down their throats, I think, as they would say in Republican parlance.
That is a familiar
or ramming
term.
Or jamming. I don't know what it is. I mean, yeah, I think he's
both ramming and jamming.
I think Mitch McConnell realized, like, okay, we've had 7 years to come up with a plan. we're not going to come up with a plan that everybody's going to sign on to. So this is going to be one of those things where it's like, I'm going to make everybody make the decision with as little time as possible so that they will just react to the most obvious forces, which is everybody who's around them, everybody on talk radio, and make the decision not between this and some other sort of better possible option out there, but between this and you essentially voting for Obamacare. And
right. And you heard Dean Heller yesterday say that we're just looking to get this over with. I mean, I think that's the end game for some of these senators. They think they can just, get the pressure off and get this out of their hair. That's the way that they're thinking about something that's going to affect millions of people. That incorporates 1/5 or 1/6 of the economy. And they're just looking to get it over with. I think that's as damning a quote about this entire process as any you could find.
It's unbelievable. Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos